Okay, Bismillah. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Lahu ni'matu wa lahu al-fadlu wa lahu al-thana'u al-hasan. Wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidina wa habibina wa maulana Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. I ask Allah the Exalted to grant us all the sincerest of intentions, the ability to understand and to do good, and the reward in the hereafter. It might be too dark there. Leave that light on for that side in case people have got then books with them. You can follow it in the book, inshallah. Just that, no, that side one. The one that's closest to the wall. Okay. So we started reviewing this book together called أوجز المختصرات في علم الحال على مذهب السادة الحنفية, which is a text in the Obligatory Knowledge. We started by mentioning Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa bihi nasta'een ala amuri dunya wad deen. That we start in the name of Allah, or I start in the name of Allah, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. Praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds. We ask Allah for help in our worldly and religious matters. وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد خاتم النبيين. And we ask Allah to raise the rank of our Master Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the last of the prophets, and to raise the rank of his pure al and his chosen companions, and to protect his nation from what he sallallahu alayhi wasallam feared for it. Okay, so that's where we pretty much got this by way of introduction. The author, may Allah have mercy upon him, he then said, وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ الْعَلِيِّ الْعَظِيمِ. This statement, it means there is no power to avoid sin or strength to be obedient except by Allah granting these to one. Al-Ali, that is one of the names of Allah, and Al-Azim. Al-Bazzar, he narrated in his Musnad that one of the companions, they said this statement. And this statement in the Arabic is known as the Hawqala. Like when we say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, this is known as the Basmala. Alhamdulillah, it is known as the Hamdala. This particular dhikr, they call it the Hawqala. That companion, he said this statement, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked him, do you know what this means? And he said, Allah and his messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam know best. And the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, he then explained the meaning of this, La hawla wa la quwwata. Hawl means to evade. And in this context, it means there is no evading. That is, no evading sins except by Allah protecting one from doing them. Wa la quwwa. Literally, and there is no strength. So quwwa, it means strength, power, or ability. And in this context, it means that there is no ability to do the good deeds except by Allah helping one to do them. So la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. There is no avoiding the sins except that is by Allah, that is by Allah protecting that person. And there is no quwwah, there is no strength to do the good except by Allah enabling one to do it. Allah who is Al-Ali and Al-Azim. If you remember in the previous lesson, we said the names of Allah are in general of two types. One type of name, it is specific to Allah. You cannot use that name for other than Allah. Like which name? Allah and Ar-Rahman. These names are specific to Allah. You can't use them about the creation. The meaning and the name is specific to Allah. And then there is a second type of name, which the name, the word, it is used for Allah and it is used for the creation. But the meaning in which it is used for Allah, it's not used in that meaning for the creation. And the meaning in which you use that name for the creation, it's not used in reference to Allah, the Exalted. So Al-Ali and Al-Azim, these are names that are used for Allah and the creation. Okay, Al-Ali then is a name of Allah and it means the Exalted. Okay, and to be more specific, it means the one who is clear of the attributes of the creatures and who is higher in status than everything else. Okay, the one who is clear of the attributes of the creation, of the creatures, and who is higher in status than everything else. Al-Azim is another name of Allah, and it means the greatest, i.e. the one who deserves the attributes of greatness, glory and purity from all imperfection, and who is glorified, that is honored above everything else that is glorified. You might say about a person Ali, and you might even say Al-Ali. And Ali, the companion of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, this is the same word. Okay, so this name, it might be used about the creation. You might say Al-Ali and you might say Al-Azim about a person, but not in the same meaning as it is said about Allah, the Exalted. Al-Ali and Al-Azim, they have a very similar meaning. Ali, yani exalted, okay? Azim means greatest. Both of them, as I said, have a very similar meaning, and that is that Allah is greater than anyone and anything else, and that He does not resemble the creation. أما بعد, okay, thereafter, فإن العلم نور والجهل تيه وحيرة وخسار. Thereafter, truly, the knowledge is a light, and ignorance is being astray, in confusion and loss. أما بعد, this phrase, it means thereafter. And you will find it in the books of many scholars and even in speeches that people give. They'll say a particular introduction and then they'll say amma ba'd, thereafter, and then they'll mention some other things. Some of the scholars, they said that the first person to use this phrase was Prophet Dawood alayhi salatu wassalam. Okay, so it is something that you will find that from the era of Prophet Dawood and even thereafter from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam through the companions thereafter, this phrase, it comes up a lot, amma ba'd, okay, in the khutbahs, in the speeches and in the sermons and in the books of the scholars. Knowledge is the light that is used by one to find guidance and to illuminate the path to a successful hereafter. These are things we've talked about in the previous lessons, so I'm just going to go through these relatively quickly now because we've had a couple of introductory lessons. So this is again just setting the scene, and for the sake of completeness, we're just reading the main part of the text and the basic explanation. So knowledge is the light that is used by one to find guidance and to illuminate the path to a successful hereafter. The one who does not learn is like someone who wanders in a desert at night. They do not know by each step that they are taking, are they getting closer to or further away from their goal. the one who does not have knowledge to guide them, they might think that what they are doing is good, whilst it would actually be bad. They might think that they are doing something rewardable, and it would actually be sinful. They might be disobeying Allah and following the way of shaitan, whilst in actual fact they think they are doing something good. When a person does not have knowledge, they become like a toy in the hands of shaitan. Shaitan takes them left and right. Okay? And they do not even realize that what they are doing is wrong. They might put effort even. They might put effort, they might even sacrifice certain things to do that particular sinful matter, thinking that what they are doing is something good, something rewardable, something beneficial. Like even the Hindus, who, as I said in the past, one of them might make an idol out of gold, decorate it with diamonds, think that they are doing something good, whilst in actual fact they would be committing kufr. Similarly, there are many Muslims nowadays who think that they are doing something good. Some of them, they say statements that insult Allah. Just the other day, myself and other people witnessed a particular individual who believed that what they were saying is something good and beneficial, and they said that Allah has a form, a shape, that Allah sits. Whilst these words, without doubt, are an insult for Allah, the Exalted. Having a size, a shape, and a form means that that thing is limited. Whatever that limit is, okay? Everything that has a size or a shape, by definition, it is limited. Even if the person didn't use the word limited, it's meant, it's included. It's like, for example, if I say, I walked from this room to that room, okay? I didn't tell you that I moved. I said I walked from this room to that room. But it's understood that when I say I walked from one place to another place, let's say 100 meters away, it is understood that I moved. So there are some things that even if you don't say them, okay, the meaning is included. So if somebody says that Allah has a size or a shape, or that Allah sits, they are ultimately saying that Allah has a limit. And what is limited is weak, and what is weak cannot be God. To say such things about Allah is kufr, and it is an insult for Allah, the Exalted. So knowledge is the light that guides a person to be able to tell the difference between what is right from what is wrong. Ignorance is loss, humiliation, and destruction. Remaining upon ignorance means for the accountable person to accept for themselves, to live in humiliation and disrespect, and to accept for themselves the state of the people of misguidance, i.e. those people about whom Allah informed us that they are those who are astray. They are people who in this life, they think that they are on the correct path, whilst they are not. They put effort in doing the sins, thinking, as I said earlier on, that they are doing something good and beneficial. As Allah revealed in the Quran, the biggest of losers are those people who think that they are on the correct path whilst they are not. So these are the people of misguidance, those whom Allah did not grant guidance and the ability to obey. Rather, Allah prevented them from the path of guidance and goodness. Among them are Arabs and non-Arabs, males and females, people who have a certain amount of intelligence. Okay, there might be people who have a certain amount of even knowledge, but they did not actually acquire the knowledge in the right way, or they did not understand that which they learned, or they mixed the truth with falsehood. In any of those cases, the result is not a good one. If a person learns certain basics, their foundation will be right. And what is established on that foundation, okay, will have a solid base to rest upon. Subsequently also, if you hear something wrong, you will always refer back to your base, the foundation that you have. And through that, you will be able to differentiate between what is right from that which is wrong. Thereafter, the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, he said, فَمِنَ الْعَارِ عَلَى الْمُكَلَّفِ أَنْ يَرْضَى لِنَفْسِهِ بِحَالِ أَهْلِ الْخِزِي وَالْخِذْلَانِ. And so it is disgraceful for the accountable person to accept for themselves to be in the state of the shameful and misguided people. The accountable person in Arabic is called the mukallaf. Who is the mukallaf? The mukallaf is the one within three conditions are found. Three matters are fulfilled in a person, or have to be fulfilled in a person, for them to be considered a mukallaf, an accountable person. That means accountable in the hereafter, for that which they do in this life, for that which they say in this life, for that which they believe in this life. Those three are, for one, to be pubescent, sane, and have heard the basic call of Islam. Being pubescent, the details of this, they'll come in future lessons. Religiously, what is the definition of being pubescent? Being sane, it means their mind is working. At a very basic level, this means that if you say to a person, this is a table, that is a chair, for example, that is a door, they have an understanding of what you're talking about. If you wanted to go a bit more, it's like if you say to a person, how many times does Monday come within a week? Okay? And they know that the answer to that is once. You know, animals, they don't have an intellect. They might be able to learn certain actions and behaviors. But concepts even very simple like this, that the fact that Ramadan, the month of Ramadan, this month, it appears once in each year. Okay, basic concepts like that, they require a mental reasoning, the mind to be working to a certain level. That is a person who is considered to have sanity, to be sane. In general, for their mind to be working. Okay, for their mind to be working. It's not like the mind of a 2 or a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, for example. And to have heard the basic call of Islam. What is the basic call of Islam? La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. This is the basic call of Islam. How do we know that? Because that is the call that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to give to the kafirs, okay, whilst they were even committing their kufr. He would walk around the Kaaba and there would be non-Muslims there. And he would say to the people, La ilaha illallah. Right? I'm calling you to this. La ilaha illallah. There is no God except for Allah. There is no creator except for Allah. That is, Allah is the one who creates the benefit and the harm, not these idols that you are worshipping. Allah alone is the one that deserves to be worshipped. So that's what he would say to them. La ilaha illallah. That's the basic call that he conveyed to them. Some of them, he gave them more details. Some of them, that's all he passed on to them. In both cases, subsequently, Allah, through what was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, these non-Muslims were considered accountable, held to account for their kufr after he ﷺ had conveyed this basic message to them. As for Muhammadur Rasulullah, this statement, it was said by the Prophet ﷺ in more than one way. He would tell them, La ilaha illallah, and that I am the messenger of Allah. And it was understood that believe in Allah and believe in Him as being the messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And both of these things, believe in them. So that is the basic call of Islam. Okay? And it's divided into these, as we said, two testifications of faith. Those who do not learn the basic obligatory knowledge are the misguided people, for whom Allah did not will goodness. And the one who is guided to learn this knowledge, let them thank Allah. Yeah, because as we said, knowledge is a light. Okay, a great, an honorable light, a beneficial light. And ignorance is loss and destruction, disgrace and humiliation. People imagine being like really embarrassed. Okay, really embarrassed. But can you imagine, like right now, I sometimes give the example, if one of us brothers had to walk into this hall, okay, with their chest exposed, okay, that's not haram for the chest to be exposed. In general though, everybody here, brothers and sisters, would find that so embarrassing. There are some people, they walk up and down the streets like that because for them that is the norm, okay? Anyway, there are things that you'd find you'd be very self-conscious and so on. On the day of judgment, there will be people who are naked. And it will be as though they are not even aware of their own nakedness and that of others. Can you imagine a state like that? Being so afraid. The reason why they would not be aware of their own nakedness and that of others is because they will be in a very afraid state. Can you imagine that? Yani, this is something one of us can imagine. If I was so afraid, but still I'd be so conscious even of exposing my chest in public. Even if I was really afraid, I wouldn't be able to probably switch off from that. How about then a person on the day of judgment? What will be the situation of people? And this is why the scholars, they said, the intelligent person looks at themselves now, fixes what needs to be fixed now before it is too late, before they get to the day of judgment, at a time at which people will be full of regret. They'll be wishing that they can go back and make amends. And eventually they'll be wishing to be no more, to come to an end. But this would not be granted to them on that day. The aforementioned issues are understood from the Sahih Hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, narrated by Al-Bukhari, that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Man yuridillahu bihi khayra yufaqihu fid din." The Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, he said, those whom Allah eternally willed for them goodness, Allah grants them the correct understanding of the rules of the religion. Okay? Fiqh refers to understanding, knowledge and understanding. So Allah grants them the correct understanding of the religion. The author, he continued to say that a person who is in a state of like a lowly state, in a disgraceful state, such a person, he said, وَيُهْمِلَ تَحْصِيلَ عِلْمِ الْحَالِ, that such a person, they would be neglecting acquiring the immediately required knowledge, the one whom Allah has disgraced, the one for whom Allah did not eternally will goodness. Among the signs of that is that they've not learned the basic obligatory knowledge of the religion. Okay? Ilmul hal. Which nowadays, there are many people who didn't learn it. There are many people who, for example, would be driving a car that many people consider to be very nice, dressed a certain way, okay, trimmed up, appearing a certain way, thinking I'm in a really good state, but really they would be having a very low state without them realizing it. Really, they are actually accepting for themselves a humiliated state, a lowly state. It's just that they fooled themselves into thinking otherwise. And when they get to their grave, that's when they will realize the reality of their situation. Subhanallah. Therefore, it is a shameful state for one not to learn religious knowledge, and in particular to neglect learning what in Arabic is referred to as ilmul hal, the immediately required knowledge. This is the part of the personally obligatory fardu ayn knowledge that a person needs to learn immediately. Otherwise, one would commit an enormous sin. If you remember, we said that there is a certain amount of knowledge that every one of us has to learn. Every individual has to learn it. If we don't learn it, we would be sinful, an enormous sin. Okay? The sins are in general of two types. Sin from one point of view, it's bad. There is no major and minor from one point. It's bad. Sin is bad. Minor does not mean that it doesn't matter. It's minor. Okay? Minor here means compared to the other one, it's lesser. So don't think that when we say it's a minor sin, that this means this doesn't matter. No. Sometimes in English they say, oh, it's minor, isn't it? And they mean it doesn't matter. When we say minor sin, it means compared to the major one. So what is the difference? And we'll talk about it in more detail in the future lessons to come. The major sin is the sin if you commit even one of them, you deserve to be punished in hellfire for a period of time. One of them. The minor sin is not like that. Okay? The minor sins, you will be punished for them if their number is greater than the number of your good deeds. If the number of your good deeds and your minor sins are equal, and of course we're talking about a Muslim here, then Allah will forgive them. Of course, if they're less than even more so, He would forgive them. As for the major sins, then even one of them, you deserve punishment in hellfire. Among the major sins is to not learn the fardu ayn ilm, the personal obligatory knowledge of the religion, which sadly nowadays there are even some imams in masjids who did not learn the personal obligatory knowledge of the religion. That's how bad the situation became. Not just that, outside of that, you will find that nowadays maybe 99% of the people, Muslims that you come across, they have not learned the fardu ayn ilm, the personal obligatory knowledge of the religion. 99% perhaps. In my experience, it's more than that. I'm just saying, perhaps I want to think, and you think well of people, don't judge everybody that you meet that they must be an enormous sinner and ignorant. Think well of them, think they must have learned this obligatory knowledge. However, at the same time, be aware that nowadays the situation is actually really, really bad. Most people did not even learn the minimum knowledge that every Muslim, and male and female, is obligated to learn. What's that knowledge called? Fardu ayn ilm. And as I was saying, missing that, not learning that, is an enormous sin, deserving of punishment in hellfire. deserving of punishment in hellfire if you don't learn this minimum knowledge. Not just that, the situation is more dire and serious than that. That in one sense, do you know what, how sad the situation is? That's like your best case scenario. That you are deserving of punishment in hellfire if you don't learn the personal obligatory knowledge of the religion. Because the more likely outcome from that is if you've not learned this minimum knowledge, you might actually even be believing something that takes you out of Islam without you even realizing it. The Prophet ﷺ said, some people say things thinking that they are permissible to be said, but those things would take them into the bottom of hellfire. A place where only kafirs will be, something which we'll come on to talk about in more detail later on. Anyway, we spent the last couple of lessons talking about this. I'm just going to go forward now. So there is something called fardu ayn ilm, personal obligatory knowledge of the religion. Okay? If you've not heard of it, it just emphasizes the point even more. That most people nowadays, even as I said, sadly, many even imams in masjids, okay, they don't learn this minimum amount of knowledge. And that knowledge then is also divided into two. One part of it is called ilmul hal. It is that obligatory knowledge that you need right now. You can't delay it. Actually, you should be spending day and night learning it. If you didn't learn it, really you shouldn't be going home. You should be going to somebody and saying, teach me this. Let me learn at least the basics. The basic belief in Allah, which you might learn in 20 minutes. How to protect that belief, you might learn it in 10 or 15 minutes. We're going through things in more detail here. This is a review, okay? And to build upon what other people, and I said this last time so that nobody is being misunderstanding me, so that nobody's misunderstanding me. If you have not learned this knowledge, then you need to put more effort. This once a week lesson is not enough. Moreover, we're going to be going through things in more detail than perhaps you even need right now in some issues. You want to take a summary, 20 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour, you cover that. Then you learn about how to purify and pray. If you've not learned how to purify and pray, when you stand to pray, how do you know that your prayer is even valid? There was a person who stood to pray in front of the Prophet ﷺ, narrated by Bukhari, Muslim and others. He stood to pray and he tried 3 times. Each time the Prophet said, you didn't pray. The prayer is not valid, it's not valid, it's not valid, it's not valid. He tried again and again. Eventually he said, I don't know any other way. The Prophet ﷺ never said to him, therefore it's okay. طيب, on that note, let's take a short break. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. There's for some reason this mic volume is low and the sensitivity needs to be adjusted slightly, I think. Just make it go up a bit. The sensitivity of the mic. We also got a copy of the book here where it said there is no power to avoid sin or strength to be obedient. It's supposed to say, except by Allah. The word accept is, for some reason, missing, subhanallah. Let's continue then. So the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, has he started recording this again? Yeah. He said, فَرَأَيْتُ جَمْعَ هَذَا الْمُخْتَصَرِ لِيَكُونَ مُعِينًا على فهم هذا القدر المفروض عينا من علم الدين في أقصر مدة. Thus, he said, I deemed it appropriate, because there is a minimum knowledge that we all have to acquire. Not learning that minimum knowledge, which is well specified, is an enormous sin deserving of punishment in hellfire. On top of that, if you did not learn it, your belief might not be correct. Your Islam might not be valid. Your prayers might not be valid. Your fasts might not be valid. The zakah that you give might not be valid. The hajj that you perform might not be valid. Your marriage might not be valid. Your buying, your selling, your renting, hiring, all of the transactions that you do might not be valid. You might be committing many sins of the eyes, sins of the tongue, sins of the hand, sins of the body parts without even realizing that you are actually disobeying Allah, your Creator, if you did not learn. This is why, as I said, and the author said, not learning is accepting for yourself a state of humiliation. Even in this life, you might look to yourself very high because of the car you drive, the body that you have, okay, the friends and likes you have on social media or whatever else. You might be thinking about yourself, I'm in a good situation. But then when you get to your grave and you get to the day of judgment, you realize it's not how I thought. Why? Because you didn't learn. As I said, the one who doesn't learn is like a toy in the hands of shaitan. Shaitan takes him here and there, plays with him. And the person, unfortunately, goes along from one low status to another even lower status. So not learning this obligatory knowledge is a big thing. So the author of this book, he said, I deemed it appropriate, okay? And I saw it appropriate to compile together this summary to assist, to help in the understanding of acquiring that obligatory knowledge, that personal obligatory religious knowledge in the shortest time. So to understand this issue a bit further, I mean the author gives his name there, Shaykh Basim al-Jilani. Okay, may Allah raise his rank and have mercy upon him and his teachers. He said, I compiled this mukhtasar, summary, okay? Many scholars throughout the centuries, when they wrote books, they wrote something called a mukhtasar. Mukhtasar literally means a summary. And to be more specific, it means to mention a lot of things using a few words. So he's like he condensed a lot of important information down to a few words, so that it becomes even easier and quicker for a person to learn the personal obligatory knowledge of the religion. Some people, when you encourage them to come to classes like this, okay, to consider this as an analogy. One of us, we typically in this country, we go to school from the age of 4 to 16. Okay, that's around 11 years of schooling that one of us, if you like, goes through. The average school year, okay, is 190 days. Okay, if you include all your summer holidays, spring bank holidays, whatever it is, all those holidays, when you put them together, it's 190 days that you spend actually. And you multiply that by 11 and you work out how many hours it is. Okay, as we did in the past, that if you're doing, let's say, 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, 30 hours, basically each week, multiply that out by whatever, 38 weeks, and you calculate how many hours you spend at school, right? I can't remember what the answer was. It's something like, I don't know, 12,000 hours or something, or more, whatever, something like that. X number of thousands of hours. Then you ask yourself, how many religious lessons would I have to attend 52 weeks of the year? Not missing a single week, 52 weeks of the year. How many lessons will I have to attend, like for an hour, hour and a half even, every single week? For how many years? Just so that I spent the same amount of time that I spent at school up until GCSEs. You know what the answer is? About 120 years. You would have to come to a class like this 52 weeks a year, Not for 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, 120 odd years. Just so that you spend the same amount of time that you spent at school up until what? GCSE. Many people might have gone there and got 1 GCSE, 2, even if you got 10. How is that going to help you in your grade? This balance that some people talk about, what balance? Well, where is the balance there? And if a person, in reality, learning how to read and write is something good and beneficial. But if you died even without learning how to read and write, if you had no GCSEs to your name, but you have the correct belief in Allah and His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you put effort to learn what the master of the messages, our teacher and guide, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the message that he came with, the message that teaches us right from wrong, enables us to know the path that leads to paradise, saves us from ending up in hellfire. Think about what you would prefer if you were in your grave. To have on your gravestone, I don't know, 12 A-star stars or grade 9s at GCSEs, 5 A-levels, forget 3, okay, 5 A-levels, a degree in this and a degree in that, Nobel Prize in this and that, and they put it all on your grave. What benefit to you? You know how bad things are now? Most Muslims that I meet, they cannot even say Allah. Allah, they say Allah. Most Muslims that I personally meet, they can't even say the name of the Prophet. They say Muhammad, or Muhammad, Muhammad, like that with a ha. Most Muslims, they don't even say his name properly. Most Muslims don't even say Assalamu alaikum properly. Assalamu alaikum, Assalamu alaikum. It's not hello, it's a greeting that is in Islam, but one in which when you meet, look how great our religion is. When you meet your fellow Muslim, okay, you make a dua for them, and they make a dua back for you. That's how you start. Even if you're passing by another Muslim in the street, and you say, Assalamu alaikum, it means may Allah protect you. May Allah grant you safety. May Allah protect you. And the person replies back to you, may Allah protect you as well. This is our, if you like, greetings that we exchange. People, what do they say? Assalamu alaikum. That's not English. It's not Urdu. It's not Punjabi. It's something that's a distortion of the Arabic that Allah knows best. Even if in any language it has a meaning. Anyway, but this is the type of thing, that situation that we ended up at. People, many of them, they can't say the name of Allah properly. Many of them did not even have the correct belief about Allah, amongst other things. As sadly, it will become apparent as you go forward from one point of view, but from another point of view, thank Allah that you have been enabled to learn before death came to you. That's all I would say in that regard. Anyway, continuing then. So the Mukhtasar is a type of book that is a summary. Many scholars wrote Mukhtasars. This author, he said, I compiled here like the summary of summaries, the briefest of summaries, something that is really, really extra concise to make it even easier for a person to learn the obligatory knowledge, and in particular to learn that part of the obligatory knowledge which you need right now. Ramadan, you need to learn how to fast before you fast. The Prophet ﷺ, he said some people from their fasts, all they will get is hunger. Okay? So you need to learn how to fast before you fast. But if Ramadan is 6 months away, for example, you don't have to learn it right now. You could learn it next week or the week after. As for praying, you need to learn right now. That's ilmul hal, knowledge that you need right now. And he said, I named this book the briefest of summaries of the immediately required knowledge according to the madhab of the Hanafi masters. Okay? Madhab means tariqa, i.e. the way. The way of the Hanafi masters, it means the top Hanafi scholars. So what do we mean when we say Hanafi? It means a follower of a person called Imam Abu Hanifa. This scholar who was born in around the year 80 after the Hijrah and who died in the year 150 after the Hijrah in Iraq. Okay, he is the head of one of the 4 famous Sunni schools. And nowadays, these are the only Sunni schools. If you're not in one of these 4, then you're not among Ahl Sunnah in general. Okay? Unless you yourself are a mujtahid. What that means, we'll get back to it at another time. It means a top scholar who reached a level of scholarship similar to Abu Hanifa. Okay, radiyallahu anh, which theoretically is possible, even though it is extremely, extremely rare. It was rare in the past, right? It was very rare in the past. Nowadays, even more so. Anyway, this scholar, he was a Persian. He was not an Arab. His name was Nu'man ibn Thabit. He was known as Nu'man ibn Thabit al-Kufi. Al-Kufi in reference to Kufa in Iraq. That's where he spent most of his life, but he is buried in Baghdad. Why? Because towards the end of his life, the ruler wanted him to be the supreme judge, the head judge, and he refused. Some people, they pay money, they do things to get to that position. He refused. The ruler insisted. He insisted that he would not take on the position. They imprisoned him. They beat him up. He still refused, and he died in prison poisoned. That's how he eventually died, and now he's buried in Baghdad. He was not from Baghdad. He was from Kufa. But that's where he was imprisoned, and that's where they eventually killed him, radiyallahu anhu. As for the other famous Imams, you've got Imam Malik ibn Anas, who was the Imam of Medina, who died in the year 179 after the Hijrah. And then you've got Muhammad ibn Idris, that is Imam al-Shafi'i, who was from the Quraysh, the same tribe as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who died in the year 204 after the Hijrah. He was born 150 after the Hijrah, in the same year that Imam Abu Hanifa died. He was 54 years old then, according to the Islamic calendar, right, when he died. Not very old, but his knowledge is known throughout the world. The Prophet ﷺ said there would be a scholar from the Quraysh, his knowledge would be taught throughout the world. The scholar said, it's definitely a Shafi'i. As I said, you go to western parts of America, even towards Alaska and Vancouver, through to Sydney, and you'll find Shafi'is there. People following the madhab, the way of Imam Shafi'i, the fourth one being Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Okay, so these are the elite scholars in this ummah, and then when we talk specifically in the Hanafi school, we mean then Imam Abu Hanifa and his 2 students and others who are considered trustworthy in transmitting the teachings of Imam Abu Hanifa. And just to clarify briefly here, for ourselves, the base is the Quran and the Hadith. Some people, when you tell them, we follow Imam Abu Hanifa, they say, as for me, I follow Quran and Hadith. Implying as though if you say you are a Hanafi, or Abu Hanifa himself, as though he was not following Quran and Hadith. Or if you say to them, I'm a Hanafi or a Shafi'i, they say, I'm a Muslim. Okay? Right, and so am I. Like, how does it mean if you say you're Hanafi that you're not a Muslim? It's like somebody said, I'm Pakistani, right? And you said, another person, well, I'm a Muslim. Okay, and the Prophet ﷺ was Qurayshi. He was from the Quraysh. He was a Hashimi. Okay? There is nothing wrong in saying statements like that by way of recognition. okay, by way of recognition. And even if you are from, I don't know, London, they might say a Londoner, right, from Halifax, what do they call them?
Yorkshireman.
What do they call somebody from Halifax? Do you know, this may be your homework for next week. There's a Halifax in Canada, and they coined a term that is more famous for people from Halifax. Halifaxians, it might be said. I don't know it that well. Anyway, using terms that are for recognition, this is a matter that is, there is nothing in it that goes against the religion. It's permissible, you can say that, okay? So saying that you are a Hanafi or a Shafi'i in the meaning that you are following the teachings of Imam Abu Hanifa, there is nothing wrong in that whatsoever, okay? Abu Hanifa himself, he was a scholar who reached a level of scholarship in understanding the Quran and the Hadith. He was a master in the Arabic language. He memorized the Quran. He memorized sayings of the Prophet ﷺ with the chain of narrators back to the Prophet ﷺ. He knew about the biographies of the people in that chain. He knew about the different types of texts in the religion, in the ayahs of the Quran and in the ahadith. So for example, he knew about which of the ayahs are muhkam and which are mutashabih, which are nasikh and which are mansukh, which are mutlaq and which are muqayyad, what is am and what is khas. These are just among some of the basics in terms of understanding about the different verses of the Quran and also the sayings of the Prophet ﷺ, something that is outside of the scope of this particular lesson. But just to give, like I'm just mentioning these things, just to give you like a flavor. These were not just ordinary scholars. Okay? If you heard of a scholar called As-Sarakhsi, okay? Some of you will have, some not. He authored a book called Al-Mansub. Okay? It's about this big. He authored it whilst he was imprisoned in a well. His student would come to the next to the well and he would dictate from the well. When you read that book, you think as if anybody's dictated that. The level of detail that he mentions and references and proofs that he gives, you wouldn't appreciate that to that extent. There were scholars who memorized 100,000 sayings of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Bukhari, the famous Sahih al-Bukhari, it has about 7,500 sayings in it, with their chains of narration. Can you imagine what 20,000 looks like now, or 50,000, or 100,000 sayings? Like Al-Hafiz ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, to become a Hafiz of Hadith, that's what you need to memorize. These scholars were not mujtahids. They're not at the level of Ash-Shafi'i and Abu Hanifa. They're not at that level. They themselves said, we are followers of these imams. Al-Hafiz ibn Hajar, he said about himself that he is a Shafi'i. As-Sarakhsi, he said about himself that he is a Hanafi. Okay, so even scholars have to follow these scholars who were at a level that allowed them to take directly from the Quran and the Hadith. If you're not at that level, then you can't take directly from the Quran and the Hadith. You take from those who are qualified to take from the Quran and the Hadith. That is, to extract judgments from the Quran and the Hadith. So Abu Hanifa, he had two famous students. One of them was called Ibn al-Hassan, Imam Ibn al-Hassan, Muhammad Ibn al-Hassan al-Shaybani, and Al-Qadi Abu Yusuf. And there are others among his students. The author, may Allah have mercy upon him, he then said, وَعَلَى اللَّهِ تَوَكُّلِي وَإِلَيْهِ أُنِيبُ. And in Allah is my trust, and to Him I turn for help. To trust in Allah, it means to have a reliance upon Him. That is to believe firmly that Allah is the one who creates both the benefit and the harm. No one can benefit us, that is, with anything, if Allah has not willed for that benefit to reach us. If the entire creation got together to benefit us, if Allah has not willed for that benefit to reach us, it would never reach us. Likewise, if everybody got together to harm us, if Allah has not willed for that harm to reach us, it will never reach us. Indeed, Allah guides whomever He eternally willed. Our job is to learn and to teach people the correct knowledge, okay? Sincerely, for the sake of Allah. If others accept, then we benefit and they benefit. If they do not accept, we still benefit. It's upon them. The harm is then upon them. It's on their heads. Okay, we should put effort to learn and to teach. Learning one chapter of knowledge is more rewardable than performing 1,000 rak'ahs of the optional prayers, the nafil prayers. Can you imagine performing 50 nafil, 100 nafil, 360 nafil? That's a lot. 1,000 is much more. Learning a chapter of knowledge, you might learn it in 20 minutes. That's what the Prophet ﷺ said. It's more rewardable than performing 1,000 rak'ahs of the optional prayers, that is. And in another hadith, he said that if you teach that knowledge to others, then those on the earth and in the sky, and even the fish within the sea, would seek your forgiveness from Allah. There are more angels. In the sky, it means the angels. There are more angels than there are pebbles on the earth. More than the raindrops. This is a topic, we'll talk a bit more about it in the lessons to come. The angels are very, very numerous. Very, 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 very numerous. The skies are full of angels. They would make dua for you. There are those on the earth whom Allah would direct them to make dua for you. And even he sallallahu alayhi wasallam informed us, even the fish within the sea, they would seek your forgiveness. So this is something big. One should not neglect it. So what we are covering in this text is an explanation of a text that we mentioned earlier on, أوجز المختصرات في علم الحال على مذهب السادة الحنفية. The briefest of summaries covering the knowledge that you need to learn as a Muslim right now to be safe. Okay? To be not falling into sin. To ensure that your iman is correct. To ensure that your prayers are correct, your fasts are correct, your marriage is valid, okay? Your dealings are valid, your buying and your selling, all of these things that they are valid. To learn that particular knowledge. There are 3-level explanations that we are typically following here in this town. There is the very basic one which we covered a while ago, which if you want to take that, there are people willing to come and teach you in your own homes. Okay, for free. You set a time, there'll be somebody who will come and sit with you and review that basic knowledge. And knowledge, whatever you take, you should try to take it 3 times. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, some things he would repeat to a person 3 times. Why did he used to repeat some things 3 times? So that it becomes well rooted within the heart. Okay, so that it becomes well rooted within the heart. So you've got the briefest of explanations of the briefest of summaries. Okay, that's level 1. Level 2, we call it the izhar. Okay, the manifestation of the benefits. Level 2, and this is a level 3 explanation. Okay, so this is what we are going through at present. One should put effort to learn it, to review it, get a recording of it whilst you're at work, driving, doing things around the house. You try to listen to it more than once. Okay, by that you'll find that the knowledge becomes more rooted within your heart. And I repeat again, my intention is not to sit here to entertain you. Sometimes people, they want to be entertained. I'm telling this story or that story to make you laugh a bit and so on else. This is in obligatory knowledge that I don't want to be distracted with things that, unless there is a benefit. Unless there is a benefit. That's in my interest and in your interest. So you need to be patient. Imam al-Shafi'i, he said, listen to this great scholar, okay, about whom even there is a hadith to that extent. He lived hundreds of years after the Prophet, alayhi salatu wassalam. And he over 150 plus years. Anyway, he said, knowledge did not give me a part of itself until I gave all of myself to it. Knowledge did not give me a part of itself until I gave all of myself to it. He became a mujtahid, according to some scholars, when he was in his teens. And just to give you an idea, he had an amazing mind, very, very sharp, very intelligent, very God-fearing, very pious. Subhanallah. Allah in the Quran ordered the Prophet ﷺ to seek an increase in knowledge. Allah did not order the Prophet in the Quran to ask for more of anything except for knowledge. You have what you have, be satisfied with it. Except for what? Knowledge. In the Quran, Allah revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, and he was qul, this qul is an order to say, وَقُلْ رَبِّ زِدْنِي عِلْمًا. Okay, that, O Prophet ﷺ, say, O my Rabb, increase me in knowledge. The Prophet ﷺ, and he said that, and he was the most knowledgeable in the creation of Allah, the Exalted. So we should think to ourselves that I should not be a person who satisfies themselves with the knowledge that I have, but I should want to try to increase the knowledge that Allah, the Exalted, granted to me. And also the Prophet ﷺ, he made a supplication, just as was narrated by Imam Muslim in his Sahih, through the root of our Master Ali radiyallahu anh, to say, Allahumma hdini wa saddidni. O Allah, guide me and make me do what is correct in sayings and actions. And Allah, the Exalted, knows best. Inshallah, I was hoping to move on to the next topic, but this took me more than I anticipated. Anyway, inshallah, we'll start with that next week, which is the 5 greatest matters in Islam. The Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned in a hadith narrated by Bukhari and Muslim and others, that there are 5 matters in Islam which are considered its greatest. They are like the foundation of our religion. So inshallah, we'll start the next lesson talking about them. I encourage you all to put effort to learn, to put effort to review. Don't let shaitan distract you. If somebody was to say to you that you will be paid £1,000 an hour to attend a lesson, I'm sure myself and yourselves included, we would be keen to be there. The reward in the hereafter is much greater. The last person to go to paradise will be given more than this whole world and what's in it. The last person. And in one hadith, it actually says 10 times more. People in paradise will be given a house made out of a hollow pearl that is 60 miles tall. 60 miles tall, it takes you to outer space. London from one edge to another is about 30 miles across. Do you ever hear a person who's got a house as big as London? London, when you look at it on a map, what is it? It's like a dot, isn't it? It's a dot. Okay? Can you imagine owning the world? And even what's more than that, and never growing old, getting tired or bored, never dying, never feeling sad, never feeling stressed. People in paradise, they don't sleep. Why? Because they want to continue to enjoy. And they're not in need of sleep. Paradise, as Allah revealed in the Quran, خَيْرٌ وَأَبْقَى. It is better and everlasting. Right? It is better and everlasting. It's forever. If this life, the next 10 years or 5 years or whatever, was to decide the next 10,000 years of our life to come, the next 10,000 years, how seriously should we be taking it? Isn't it? If a person ended up in a situation in court, and they were facing a situation, I don't know, maybe they were risking going to prison for 20 years. Think about how much care a person would give. All the other examples I gave, and we're not far from that now. I used to say it for years, in some ways jokingly, that if the government introduced something, that if you don't fulfill it, they said, we're going to kick you out of this country. Okay? So if you had a test to sit, and if you failed that test, they say, we're going to kick you out of this country. How much effort would we put in revising for that? We'd go on courses and review it more than once and twice and 3 times. And so you want to say, look, khalas, I'm ready now, let's just go for it. If you knew that is what was at stake, what's that compared to 10,000 years? 10,000 years does not compare to the everlasting life to come. Nor does 1,000,000 years. What's at stake is too much to risk. Anyone who thinks being born into a Muslim family that this alone is enough, then they are mistaken. That's not enough. Being born into a Muslim family, having the name of Ahmad or Ali, Fatima or Maryam or the like, this alone is not enough. This growing a beard, putting on a turban or a hat, this alone is not enough. There are some people who are born into Muslim households, Muslim families. Some of them who do not have the correct belief in Allah. I told you about a person who, more than one person, who learned this knowledge. After they learned it, they said, I used to think God is a light. You taught me this. And they're like 75 years old. Said, all my life, I believe Allah is a light. And that's not the belief of the Muslims. If anybody who believes that Allah is a light, a physical light, this is kufr. The word nur, when used about Allah, it does not mean a light. It means the one who guides, al-hadi. And if somebody said light in the meaning of guidance, that's a different issue. But some people actually believe that God is a physical light. In fact, I'll tell you bluntly, I was among them. I used to think that Allah is a light that is so amazing that it's not like any light that we saw. Like so amazing that I wouldn't be able to describe it, but some sort of a light. Because that's what I was taught growing up. And I, at that time, was having this kufr belief, which I subsequently repented from. I used to lead Friday prayers, yani outwardly, stand to lead Friday prayers. People considered that I got a certain amount of knowledge. And that's the situation that I was in. And there are many other people, many imams even in masajid. I told you I was in a place in Huddersfield, and one of the so-called muftis was giving the speech before me. And he claimed that at one point in time, he said God and the Prophet, they met. And then he said, and he did his arms like this. He said both of them, they went like this. And then he said, and they both hugged and they met and they became one. It was a packed masjid. And after he's finished, I stood up and I refuted him. He didn't say anything. And he tried to call some other people from out of town to debate. By the grace of Allah, I refuted them, and then the mosque at that time kicked them out. Anyway, but he was supposed to be like a knowledgeable person. We're not talking now about wudu and prayer, even in belief. Anybody who believes that Allah is like a big man in the sky is not a Muslim. Allah is not like me and you. Allah is not a man or a woman, male or female. Allah does not have a size, shape or color. Whatever we imagine in our minds, Allah is not like that. Barakallahu feekum. Let's stop there and we'll continue next week. Let us say La ilaha illallah and as-salah ala nabi. La ilaha illallah. Allahumma Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. At-Tabarani narrated that if people gather in any gathering, before they leave, at some point in the gathering, if they say these statements, then on the day of judgment they will be given a special reward, special merit. So even when you meet people, you visit somebody's house or the like, this is a good habit. And our Shaykh used to normally encourage us to do it even at the end of the lesson. If it's not done in the beginning or middle, even at the end of the lesson. Barakallahu feekum. Allahumma a'inna ala dhikrika wa shukrika wa husni ibadatik. Oh Allah, forgive us, guide us and protect us. Oh Allah, grant us the correct knowledge and understanding of the rules of the religion. Oh Allah, accept our attendance in this gathering and give a similar reward to all of our teachers, back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and a similar reward to all of our deceased Muslim relatives. Oh Allah, forgive them and us all of our sins and unite us in the hereafter in the highest gardens of paradise. Oh Allah, make us among those who support the religion day and night. Oh Allah, make us among the patient, sincere, and those who are humble, and those who put effort to cooperate with others who are serving the religion. Oh Allah, end our lives successfully. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.